Singularity, Abomination, and Desolation of Mankind, Section 10, Cybernation, Earth. I remember this TV show, Caprica. It was based on the Battlestar Galactica series. The show focuses on how the Cylons, a race of living machines, were created, and the story of the scientist who invented them. In the beginning, they were simple robots with limited intelligence, but the military was funding the scientists' work, and they wanted robot super soldiers, as smart, if not smarter than human soldiers, which would require a true artificial intelligence. Yet no matter how hard the scientist tried, he could not get a real AI to work. He even acquired the most advanced artificial brain in the world. Still, the robots were nothing more than highly advanced, yet dumb, machines. The scientist had also created a virtual reality device that allowed people to enter a virtual world that looked and felt like the true world. It brought a new era of gaming. For some, but others developed underground virtual clubs called flesh clubs. The kids would go to these flesh clubs and do all kinds of vile things like killing each other's avatar and such. Because when your avatar was killed in the virtual world, you would simply wake up in the real world. Yet, it still would look and feel real. The scientist's own daughter had spent a lot of time in the VR at one of these flesh clubs, and had developed a separate avatar copy of herself in the virtual world. But this avatar only existed inside the virtual world. The girl had found a way to copy herself perfectly onto the avatar, including part of her consciousness, creating a separate entity, a living copy of her avatar self with its own consciousness in the VR world. It was sort of like having an imaginary friend that you could actually touch and talk to. It was a copy of her, but also sort of an artificial intelligence too. One day the girl dies in an explosion in the real world, but the avatar copy of her still exists in the VR world, and it's alive. It's the girl in one sense, like part of her spirit, but it's also a computer program. Eventually, the scientist finds out that there's a virtual version of his daughter in the VR world, and that it is actually alive. So he goes into the virtual reality and captures the avatar on a disc, and then installs it into his non-intelligent robots, because the scientist understands that his daughter had inadvertently created a true artificial intelligence, and he believes that he can use it to make his robots have a true AI too. It works. The robot comes to life as the living avatar program meshes with the robot's limited but sophisticated AI. Thus, the Cylons are born, living machines. The robot becomes the first of a whole race of Cylons, which do eventually rise up and destroy mankind. Often I've stumbled across movies that I felt revealed some kind of truth, but I must say, it was very disconcerting when I ran into this show while writing about similar things in this book. Later on in the Battlestar Galactica epic, having wiped out most of mankind in the process of hunting down the rest, the Cylons develop biosynthetic bodies for themselves that are just as real as human bodies. They become indistinguishable from humans, so much so that only a blood test can distinguish between Cylon and human, which basically just makes it easier for the Cylons to infiltrate the remaining human colonies to wipe them out. But the actual reason the Cylons make themselves bodies of flesh is that they believe that they are the next stage of evolution, and that humans are simply flawed and obsolete beings. Sounds a lot like the things the people from the Singularity camp talk about. So, whether or not demons or unclean spirits in the spirit world are trying to use android tech and ultimately create biomechanical bodies so that they can, in effect, destroy humanity and take their place, like the Cylons did in this show, it's pure speculation. But from what I've seen and heard, it may well be within the realm of possibility. Nevertheless, one fact remains. The machines are coming, and the fate of mankind hangs in the balance. Singularity, Abomination, and Desolation of Mankind, Section 10, Part 2. Resistance is futile. Most of us know the disturbing line that the Borg, an evil cybernetic alien race from Star Trek The Next Generation, would use when they attacked a civilization to assimilate them. They would say, resistance is futile. When the Borg assimilated a people, they injected them with nanomachines, destroying all that that person was, making them into a drone, part of the Borg hive mind, a twisted cybernetic horror. Really, our world's present situation is not much different. The New World Order and the forces of darkness behind them, and every manifestation it takes, transhumanism, evolution, communism, humanism, and the like. All the evil powers of this world and its New World Order are saying the same thing to the masses that the Borg did to its victims. Resistance is futile. At one time, I would have just said that this was an interesting and good metaphor, but now this New World Order is actually becoming more like the Borg than I would have ever imagined. As the coming nanotech and cybernetics will be just another way to assimilate people. They say resistance is futile. You can see the declaration everywhere. For example, the Georgia Guidestones, also known as the Ten Commandments of the New World Order, on which it states that humanity must be maintained at 500 million, which basically means billions of people will need to be killed off. People like you, people like me. The leaders of the New World Order are so sure of their victory in all of their plans for world domination and subjugation, so positive that their evil will triumph, that they can't even imagine somebody standing up against them. The masses walk around oblivious to what's going on, sipping their Starbucks coffee, as leaders of the world, including American presidents, meet for pagan and demonic rituals in places like Bohemian Grove, secretly plotting the course for the world. America is a nation founded on Christianity, the nation with the highest concentration of true believers on earth. Yet in this country, Christians are shunned, and any mention of God is tolerated as long as it's not the mention of the God of the Bible. And saying the name of Jesus with anything other than scorn will often paint a target on your back. So most of those who claim Christianity stay silent, and churches have stopped engaging the world. Leaders of America have done everything they can to rewrite history, taking care to omit any mention of many contributions Christians have made to this country, and to change the tremendous impact that faith in Jesus Christ has had on the great men and women of the past. They mock the name of God, whose name our forefathers once engraved on America's most precious monuments. They have torn the Ten Commandments from the walls of nearly every courthouse in the country, despite the fact that the very law that's being practiced in every American courthouse was founded on the Ten Commandments. The same has happened in every part of society, yet no place greater than in the schools, and especially in the science that is taught in them. In old times, the greatest scientists were always Christians, and most made it clear that the sole reason they were such great scientists is because of God. One of these was Sir Isaac Newton. There was a time when it was understood that no scientist could really be a very good one if he did not believe in the one who created the world, and thus the science of the world. But today it is quite the opposite. A scientist who believes in God is not even really considered a scientist. Today in America, everything is compartmentalized. The Christians have been regulated only to practice their belief within the walls of their church. Sadly, many Christians have gone along with society's view that it's almost a shameful thing to bring any mention of God or the Bible into the school, to work, or any other public place. The media constantly paints Christians as a collection of bigots and sometimes even terrorists. So, as modern society becomes less and less influenced by believers, it slips more and more into darkness, into the clutches of the New World Order. Part of the fault is ours. Most of us are guilty as Christians of not standing up and fighting for the truth in every way we can. We are guilty of believing the lies of the world, for believing that we can't make a difference, when we know that God can, just with a few men or even one man, change the whole world. When you look at believers of our time, and there are some out there who are fighting and making an impact on the world, but usually they're pastors or missionaries from or in America. Yet considering the fact that America has the most believers of any place on earth, the ones who are actually doing something are precious few. Maybe that's why Jesus said, "The fields are white to the harvest, but the workers are few." The ability to impact the world for God is not just a gift given to an elite few. Any believer who has the Spirit can do the same, and more. But many, even the true believers, have been so indoctrinated by the world that they actually act as if resistance really is futile. I've spoken to many believers who act very nonchalant when I talk to them about things going on today, saying things like, "Well, it's going to happen, we can't do anything about it," or "People have been saying that it's the end times for hundreds of years," etc. Some even hold their passivity to be a virtue, considering the outrage of those who can't stand the things that are going on in the world as less mature or less spiritual than they are. Most modern churches won't abide any talk of the war against evil, or anything about Christians being warriors engaged in it. Another reason for Christians not engaging is the lack of understanding of the times we live in. Many believers don't want anything to do with a world outside of the church walls. Those who do think the only way to affect the world for God is to be part of somebody else's ministry, or they must become a pastor or a missionary to do any real good for God. I believe that way of thinking, more than any other, has made Christians have little effect on our world today. The truth is, most people are not meant to be pastors or missionaries. God gives each person an individual quest and talent that they can use to glorify Him and to help the world. Most of these talents are not recognized by ministries of modern-day churches. Things like writers, scientists, politicians, artists, and talents for business, construction, etc. There are endless ways that believers are gifted, and it's these very talents that are meant to be used to minister to the world. But few are being used for God anymore. That is the very reason that the greatest scientists are no longer Christians, and why most politicians and leaders don't know Christ or even hate Him. In the old times, it was understood that there was no difference between a pastor who is using his gift to minister to the world or a bricklayer who is using that to minister to the world. Thus, most of the greatest artists, builders, poets, and writers, scientists, and leaders in history were Christians, and in their passion for God, they left works of such beauty that even today their greatness is unmatched, and their works still speak to the glory of God. Today, No one but pastors are really even considered to be in ministry. And because the world has made it taboo and almost illegal to mention Christian faith in schools and in workplaces, or nearly any public forum, believers end up using their gifts, the ones that God gave them for ministering to the world, to just make money or as their everyday job. Then they go to church and say, I wish I could have been a pastor so I could serve God and minister to this twisted world. Is it any wonder that the world is going to hell? It's time to wake up and fight. You have to believe that you can make a difference with whatever gift you have, even if no one has done it before. You can be the first. Any talent, even if it seems mundane, can be used as a ministry to show God's glory and beauty to a lost and dark world. So realize, if you're saved, you are a minister already. And whatever you are good at, the things that you love to do, is probably meant to be your ministry. So get out there. Use it for God. Change the world. Long ago, men believed in this belief and let it guide their destiny. They touched the lives of people in their time and every generation since. If we fail to do the same in our time, not only will people suffer now, but there will be nothing truly great, holy, or beautiful for our children, or for the generations to come. I remember a while back, my wife showed me the movie Soul Surfer. It was about a girl who loved surfing. She also loved God. Her adoration and talent for surfing was actually a gift from God, but she didn't know that. She really wanted to surf for a career, but only for herself. One afternoon, while gliding across the water on her surfboard, a shark bit her arm off. She survived the attack, but was crushed when she found out that she might never surf again. But she never gave up, and she continued to surf. But now, it was more than just a job. It was because God was in it. She was now doing it because of God. She overcame overwhelming odds and became one of the few to be a pro surfer with such a handicap. And from her story, many were saved and still are today because her love for God and the testimony of her life. Imagine what would have happened if this amazing girl would have believed that the only way she could serve God was to become a pastor. The answer is nothing. Nothing would have happened. And that is the point. A lot of people get the idea that because they love to do something that it couldn't possibly be what God would want them to do. That's just crazy. It's quite the opposite. God is the one who puts the desire in you to do something. He puts it in your heart. He is the dream giver. Rather, when you find the thing that you were made to do for God, it will likely be the thing that you love doing more than anything. One of the things I have found myself saying more and more as I have grown in my relationship with God is, man, I cannot believe how cool this is, or how cool you are, God. Every time I really get excited about something, I find God is excited too. God once told me, life is an adventure. Live it. It's completely opposite of how each of us usually sees our lives. But with God, it really is the truth. Our Lord said, they overcame the devil with the power of their testimony and by the blood of Jesus Christ. He also said, blessed is he who is doing when I come. Every believer should be on their knees, praying, not only refusing to have any part of the unfruitful works of darkness, but exposing them. When evil says resistance is futile, as it is today, we should be fighting even harder. Because for us, resistance is not futile. resistance is commanded by God. And one day we will stand with the King of Kings as he wages war on this Borg of evil. And then we will say to them, resistance is futile, and it will be true. But for now, grab your surfboard, your skateboard, your pen, your paintbrush, your computer, your hammer, whatever you love to do, whatever you're good at, because this is your sword, your weapon in the war for the hearts and the minds of the people. Let God take your other hand and lead you into an adventure of your lifetime.